Good morning, Nigeria, and welcome to Daybreak, reaching you live from the nation's capital in Abuja. I am Ayuelia. Thank you for joining us on this beautiful Monday morning on Daybreak.
Good morning. We're super excited to have you join us today on the program. It's Monday morning. What's the date today? Looks like I forgot.
Today, 14th of March.
How time flies.
Yes. I mean, just exactly 1 month after the Lovers' Day. Recall that February 14th was Lovers' Day. So today, being Monday, is a day that starts, of course, with a lot of activities, as usual. It's the first day of the, working days of the week. And so quite a lot of expectations, really, on Mondays. A lot of people go out with quite a lot of expectations. We hope that by the end of the day or by the end of the week, you would have been able to achieve all that you set out to achieve.
Everybody is looking forward to the day, and I hope you set goals, set targets, towards the end of the week as well.
Yeah. All right. Now, today on the program, we have quite a lot lined up, for the show. We'll be talking about the implication of the sacking of the David Umahi, the governor of Ebonyi State. And of course, we'll also be looking at, other issues that has to do with the politics of the country generally, the falling reserves as CBN moves to reduce spending limit on debit cards. And of course, we'll be bringing you the dailies on Daybreak and also Today in History. For now, let's take a look at the news highlights.
Okay, a group, Rocha's People's Movement, on Sunday asked the leadership of the All Progressive Congress to microzone its presidential ticket to the Southeast Geopolitical Zone. The group's national coordinator, Njoku Okechukwu, and its national secretary, Ezi Ugochukwu, in a statement issued on Sunday, said APC should demonstrate patriotism by allowing the Southeast Zone the opportunity to produce the next president of the country. According to the group, Nigeria presently needs a president that can unite the country, create wealth by engaging unemployed youth, as well as care for the weak and indigent ones in the society.
All right. Now, Hydroelectric Power Producing Areas Development Commission has called on residents of Kogi State living in communities along the river Niger Bank and under torment of water flooding to take the advantage of the medical outreach being piloted by the Commission to receive the treatment of ailments posed by the flooding in the community for decades. The Managing Director of the Commission, Abubakar Yelwa, represented by the Director of Finance and Administration of the Commission, Jim Ogabi, stated this while addressing one of the affected inhabitants of the communities in Onyegdega, the headquarters of the Ibaji local government area, at the weekend. He said the Commission has embarked on free medical treatment, drilling of boreholes, and provision of streetlights in Ibaji, Konto, Karfe, Ajakuta, and Basa communities to cushion the effects of the river Niger flooding occasioned by the construction of dams on the river. Reports say that the 4 communities in the state have been ravaged by the incessant flooding, which had led to hardships, loss of lives and property for years.
For some foreign news, Russian and Ukrainian officials have suggested talks might yield positive results within days despite battles raging on. The city council of besieged Mariupol has said over 2,000 residents have been killed since the start of Russia's invasion. Authorities in Lviv say the Russian military launched a deadly airstrike targeting a Ukrainian base in Yavoriv near the Polish border, killing at least 35 people. People in Kiev are scrambling to escape with the bulk of Russian ground forces about 25 kilometers from the center of the Ukrainian capital. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg said Russia might use chemical weapons in Ukraine and that such a move would be a war crime. According to the United Nations, the number of refugees fleeing Ukraine is nearing 2.7 million. That's huge.
All right. Now, let's take a look at the events that made history on this day in our world, the 14th of March, not 2021, but the 14th of March in the world. there you have it. Now, today in history, highlighting some of the significant events of today. Now, today is International Day of Mathematics. That's a subject that, you know, a lot of us have had to deal with back in the secondary schools.
I hate maths. I do not like maths.
I believe that's the same for many of us. Mathematics, you say one thing now, the next time you're saying a different thing. So, you know, a lot of us, it's very demanding. That's the truth about mathematics. It's very demanding. And so a lot of us, sometimes some people do not have the patience. And I feel like there's a scarcity of mathematicians in Nigeria.
Yes, indeed. And I really think that another contributing factor to reasons why people do not like maths is the way the teachers actually teach us maths. They make it so complicated.
Exactly. It's different. Mathematics is different. It's not like any other subject.
Right.
So I think that it requires some kind of specialty to be able to teach mathematics effectively to the understanding of, you know, children. So in most cases, you find that the teaching sometimes gets boring. Sometimes, you know, I had one mathematics teacher back in secondary school that gets drunk before coming to class.
Oh my!
So you can imagine what he's going to be teaching you, you know, during that class. I mean, you are drunk already, so how do you
math is
teach?
already confusing on its own, so it's going to be a whole chaos.
You know, so well, today is that day for mathematics. A lot of students, I'm sure, out there, and basically, I believe it's about creating that awareness about mathematics and how important it is for our lives. You know, people often say, this finding of X that never ends. What's the relevance, you know, of it? But hey, it's very, very relevant. After all, our scientists of the world today, the innovations that we've seen in technology and all of that wouldn't have been possible without mathematics.
Right.
So it's very, very crucial to our development as a people. Then today is also, in 1957, Indonesian government of Sastranamijojo resigns. And then they also have, in 1958, South Africa's government prohibits the African National Congress. And then in 1983, OPEC cut oil prices for first time in 23 years. You also have, in 1991, Emir of Kuwait returns to Kuwait City after the Iraqis leave. And then in 1991 as well, English Court of Appeal frees Birmingham 6 who had been unjustly sentenced in August 1975 to life imprisonment. These are some of the events that marked this day, the 14th of March in our history. Now, we'll take a short breather, and then when we come back, we'll take a look at the dailies on Daybreak. I have a sense of what the papers are saying this morning. Please stay with us.
But in a situation where you find that they look like the same,
not necessarily tribal or regional.
but I have said that. But in a situation where you find that they look like the same,
Not necessarily tribal or regional.
but I have said that.
All right, thank you for staying. Now, let's begin with the Daily Trust newspaper this morning on our review. Now, the lead story on the Daily Trust newspaper is all about politics. It says Osinbajo notifies Buhari of presidential ambition. And that's according to close sources as written by Daily Trust. And then you have the rider that says, why VP shelved today's meeting with APC state chairman. And then Tinubu's ambition, APCG's memo on Osinbajo in tight corner, puts up Osinbajo in tight corner, actually. It says, President not averse to VP's ambition. And then the pictorial there shows you a man who is said to be a popular pastor, now arrested, concealing illicit drug at the Lagos airport. You could see that there in the pictures displayed there. Quite sad, really, to have some of these kind of stories come out. People that you thought, oh, these are, leaders of influence in our society, but they turn out that they themselves are involved with this kind of practices. Beside the pictorial there, you see that manufacturers lament as diesel hits 720 naira per litre. You'll find details of that on page 7. ASU may declare indefinite strike today, and that's according to official. You find that on page 4. I ran away from Arabic school for fear of Koboko. That's according to Obasanjo. Interesting piece. I believe you like it if you pick a copy of the Daily Trust newspaper. Other stories at the top there. Buni to preside over APC convention as bigwigs move to vacate court order. Imports. That's talking about imports. Mixed reactions. CBN banks ready for price verification system. These are some of the stories, but quite interesting, really, when you take a look at that story of the popular pastor that is now being arrested. Sometimes it feels heartbreaking when you see leaders of thoughts, engage in such activities. The other time that we saw quite shocking, the revelation of security officials, such as, the DCP Abakari, who's said to be involved with this, and then now a pastor. So it raises the question about, when we see people on our, pulpits for the Christians, when we see imams, when we see security officials, when we see politicians, when we see, say, maybe even in the judiciary, maybe lawyers, legal practitioners and the likes, and when we see them engage in certain kind of activities, you begin to wonder, is the society that we live in, is it living on fraud? Or what exactly? Because, trust me, and he was to use these drugs personally when he was embarking on a crusade in Kenya for 1 week. So sometimes when you hear them make remarks, and they talk to a large number of people confidently, you wonder what kind of ideas that they are putting into people, because definitely someone who is under the influence cannot, really, be very, very straight in terms of whatever he's going to be telling the people. There must be some dilution somewhere, of facts, and the truth, and, some kind of falsehood somewhere, and all of that. So you tend to wonder, for people, human beings, Nigerians, who depend basically, or I would say completely, on some of these religious leaders, leaders of thought, without sifting through what they are saying, you think about the implication and how that is going to, impact on our way of living in the country.
I really think Nigerians do not get surprised anymore, as we've seen a lot of these, propping up, and we're getting used to it. We don't get surprised anymore, and we've moved past it. When we see these things coming from people like this, as you've said earlier, leaders of thought, they're supposed to be the ones championing change, for our communities. Well, it's unfortunate that we get to see some of these stories, very, really sad stories coming from them. I really hope we move past this.
It also means that, people should be careful. Nigerians should be careful about what you hear and how you take it. Sometimes we take things hook, line, and sinker without sifting through, some of these thoughts that, that are being shared by certain people, but think about it. If you are just going to take that, without, going through and checking and verifying for yourself whether this person is actually on the right path, then you are going to be in deep trouble, because these days, there's more to the eyes, there's more to what we see, these days. You see a different thing, but it's like the more you see, the less you understand. So it's very important that you are, smart and, create that time to really go through and see through what people are saying, at every point in time. That's quite interesting. For the Daily Trust newspaper, let's take a look at others.
Okay, let's see what's happening in the Punch this morning. The lead story there is talking politics. Buni may head APC convention, uncertainty surrounds zoning. And the writers there say President asked Yobe governor to lead party to national summit. And this is according to a source. Adamu may lose out as party throws open chairman seat tussle. Oshibajo to meet state chairman ahead of presidential bid declaration. You'd find other stories on the top on page 25. Gencos disagree with TCN over outages. Blame weak transmission. And on page 21 on the Punch, talks with Labour on fuel subsidy removal ongoing. And this is according to the federal government. On page 12 on the Punch, we won't make gunpoint negotiations with ASU, says government. NDLEA traces 4.2 billion naira to Abba Kyari, co-accused accounts. Okay, there we go. You see other stories on the Punch. Gunmen attack, abduct Punch reporters, steal phones, empty accounts. You find the details of that story on page 4 and page 5 on the Punch newspaper. Why 13 Kwara crash victims were given mass burial. This is according to the police. You see the story about Amotokun arrests Lagos-based businessman, 7 others for robbery, rape. And there's a very interesting pictorial there that shows Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and other officials sharing their visit to, during their visits to hospitals in the Kiev region on Sunday. You'd find other stories on page 25. Bakers threaten shutdown as diesel price others soar. General Overseer heading for Kenyan crusade arrested with cannabis in Lagos. And on page 27, you also see the story about Obasanjo saying, I fled Arabic school for fear of Cain. You find the details of that story on page 27.
Well, quite interesting, really, stories that we are seeing. The APC, for instance, seem to be on virtually all the papers this morning. Buni, talking about Buni presiding over the APC convention. We look forward to seeing how that is going to play out, because the truth is, eventually, if he's not going to be the one to preside over the APC convention, then who will? And whether or not that will hold, you know, with a person like the Niger State Governor, Bello, being the acting chairman of the party. The INEC has said that, you know, they do not recognize any change in leadership of the APC, and that the APC requires at least 21 days. You know, they need 21 days to notify the INEC before, you know, they will recognize that. So you could imagine the kind of mess that, you know, that this will lead to if they insist on going ahead with the convention with the governor of Niger State as the chairman of the party. So quite a lot of chaos, and the most difficult time for the APC, I believe. And, you know, just not to forget to mention the story about Osibanjo also notifying Buhari on his own presidential bid. You know, this is also putting a lot of things, you know, putting a lot of pressure, you know, on the party and all of that. The president is, you know, away at the moment. And so we are hoping to see how the APC will be able to manage all of this crisis. The vice president is meant to have a meeting with the state chairman of the party, while some are saying, well, the whole meeting was about, you know, rather is about the APC, the vice president meeting with the APC state chairman to, you know, rub minds regarding his own political ambition. Others are saying, well, it basically has to do with the crisis in the party. And we are also gathering that that meeting has been called off according to directive by the president because of the, you know, level of crisis that we are seeing within the APC. So we continue to follow up and to see how, you know, all of that turns out. For now, let's also take a look at other stories on this morning. Now, if you take a look at, the Independent newspaper, Daily Independent newspaper, it has a lead story that says, Nigeria loses 91.6 billion naira yearly to foreign airlines, multiple points. And then the next one there below, we won't outsource our primary responsibility, and that's according to the Minister of Defense, not Minister of Defense, Chief of Defense Staff. And then you see also GENCOs link poor electricity supply to inefficient grid management. And then you see strike, ASU tackles FG over comments on UTAS. We are working round the clock to end fuel scarcity, and that's according to the presidency. Mining firms of FG 2.76 billion naira, and that's according to Nati. Cocaine deal, Malami denies exonerating Abba Kyari. Below the pictorial, you see a story that says MPLs may rise as CBN moratorium over COVID-19 ends. The last story at the very bottom, NDLEA arrests Church General Overseer with drugs in Lagos. These are some of the stories on the Daily Independent. At the very top there, you see also some stories talking about defection, why Umahi deputy may lose at appeal court. You would find details of that there. The next one, court restrains APC from holding March 26 National Convention. So there's this whole lot of litigations and court cases about the APC convention, which is one of the biggest threats really for the party. So these are some of the stories on the front page of Daily Independent. But the one that I find very interesting is the one on ASU. We are also seeing that there are threats, that there's a likelihood of declaring the strike indefinite, by ASU, and I'm just wondering, whether we are ready to find an end to this industrial action by ASU once and for all. This is something that has lingered for quite a while, and virtually everyone is getting sick of it. Government itself is getting sick of it. ASU itself is sick of it already. Students, who are the receiving end, are also sick of the whole strike action thing. So hopefully we'll see an end to it. But again, some of the back and forth about UTAS, IPPIS, between government and ASU, we had to see the final resolution to that. There's a committee set up by the Ministry of Education. The Minister of Education in particular, Adamu Adamu, inaugurated that committee. So we hope to see what is going to happen at the end of the meeting. They are renegotiating the agreements that have been had back in 2009 between the federal government and ASU. So we hope to see how all of that turns out. That's that.
It's really quite interesting. And they're also saying that they're not going to be having gunpoint negotiations, meaning they are not going to be under pressure, by ASU, to have these negotiations. But we are really tired of this and really hope we hear good news, not indefinite strike coming up subsequently.
Truly, I hope so.
Okay, let's take a look at some more stories. The Blueprint newspaper. The Blueprint also leads with a story about the APC crisis. Court holds party convention indefinitely. March 26 date shaky. You see the riders there. Buni still in charge, returns soon. Zoning to be decided after governor's meeting with Buhari in London. Party to sue Tambuwal, Obaseki, or Tom over defection. You'd also see ruling party arrogant in failure. This is according to the PDP. And you find other stories right at the top on page 6. Garki Hospital concession, 703 NISA staff, 42,627 NHIS, FHIS enrollees, fate uncertain. You'd also see that FCTA wants agreement terminated in 1 month. 12 months is the ideal to tidy up, and this is according to NISA. You'd see a picture there that shows you some of the 301 Nigerians, including those evacuated by the federal government from Ukraine via Budapest, Hungary, on arrival at the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport on Sunday night. You'd see other stories on page 16 and 17. Malagi boosting Niger APC's visibility unity ahead of 2023. You'd see other stories. Oyetola committed to regular salary pension payment to review chieftaincy laws. And you see other stories on the Blueprint this morning. Lekki Deep Seaport to contribute $360 billion to Nigeria's economy. This is according to the federal government. I only asked for further probe of Kyari, not exoneration, and this is according to Malami. Blackout. MBET owes us 1.644 trillion naira, Gencos allege. And on page 9, you see the story that says we lack $11.1 billion to construct Lekki Calabar rail line. And this is according to Amechi. The Blueprint also picked up the story about the general overseer arrested with cannabis at Lagos Airport. And on page 23, Phil Hughes, Kyari deserves commendation, not condemnation. And this is according to Yakase. These are some of the major stories in the Blueprint this morning.
Well, quite interesting stories there. Of course, the stories are not, much of a different from what we've seen on other papers. Now, let's take a look at the Nation newspaper this morning. On the Nation, the story is, of course, always about politics. It's the seizing already. So, APC chair, pressure mounts on Buhari to drop Adamu. And then you see also El-Rufai, Masari off to London on consultation mission. Buni returns on Wednesday and with not to take charge. I wonder why the reversal in the stand and in the position. Already earlier last week we were hearing that the new acting chairman, the
Governor of Niger
Bello,
State.
the governor of Niger State, is here to stay. And now all of a sudden we are seeing that there was a letter sent to the acting chair to take over leadership pending when Buni himself will be back. And then we'll also see other letters, sent to the secretary of the caretaker committee, and so on and so on. Different dimensions. We also heard other stories saying that, well, the president never gave his nod to anyone to take over leadership of the party, and so on. So, and then with the revelation of INEC itself also, that they are not aware, of any change in leadership and all that, and how that will, affect the convention of the party. So, obviously, maybe these are the reasons why we are seeing the reversal and the likelihood of Buni returning to take over, the chairmanship of the caretaker committee. And then other stories there. INEC should not meddle in party affairs, says Olawepo Hashim. You see also 2023, PDP opens defection talks with ex-governors, senators, and reps. PDP does not belong to Wike, says Obaseki. Russia-Ukraine war, a threat to Nigeria's food security. You'd find details of that on the Punch on page 7. And then other stories, IMF to help Nigeria, others on debts, tax. And then you see MAN laments 720 naira per litre diesel price as aviation fuel hits 600 naira per litre. While we sell petrol above 165 naira per litre by Ipman. When you see, are these all the implications of the Russia-Ukraine crisis, or it's just a coincidence? When you begin to see all of these hikes, aviation fuel 600 naira, MAN, 720 naira per litre, that's for diesel, and all of that conversations. And then the fuel scarcity itself, but we started recording this fuel scarcity even before, the Russia-Ukraine, crisis. So I'm just wondering whether we are just taking advantage of the situations around the world, to bring up some of these things. No one knows really. Well, that's that for the Nation newspaper.
Okay, let's take a look at some more stories. On the Tribune, the Nigerian Tribune. The Tribune leads with a story, as diesel hits 720, man cries to federal government. How federal government plans to reverse fuel scarcity. This is according to the presidency, and you see the details of that story on page 2. You'd find other stories also on page 8, page 2, and page 29. After 7 years together, I have no issues with Buhari. This is according to Vice President Yemi Oshibajo. Why Nigeria should lead talks for South Atlantic Treaty Organization. This is according to Bolaji Akinyemi. Terrorism. Nigeria will win. Nigeria will win. This is according to CDS Irabo. You'd find other stories on page 25 and 28. Why federal government must prevent another indefinite ASU strike. And this is according to stakeholders. 2023, capacity to tackle insecurity must be considered along with zoning. And this is according to Saraki. You see other stories also. Russia-Ukraine crisis. Nigerians may experience worsening food crisis. And this is according to LCCI. NDLEA arrests General Overseer with drugs at Lagos Airport. Seizes 40 parcels of cocaine, others at Apapa Port. You exhibit arrogance in failure. PDP replies Buhari, APC. You'd also see the story about APC CECPC. Odds favor Buni. Why APC is rethinking opposition to his leadership. APC governors regrouping behind him. Let us take heed to Buhari's admonition. This is according to Mustafa. And you'd also see my plans for women youth, Sani Musa. You see also other stories on page 6. Genco's Nation in Darkness because we are owed 1.6 trillion naira since 2013. And bet dispute power generators debt claim. And then you also see the story about fuel scarcity to end in matter of days, says federal government. We've been hearing that for weeks. I really don't know what's happening.
True. All right. Well, these are quite interesting stories. The stories about, the general overseer who was caught by NDLEA with drugs is virtually everywhere. We're also seeing that concern raised by the LCCI, Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, on the likelihood of experiencing food scarcity as a result of the Russia-Ukraine war. Yes, we know that Russia is one of the major producers of wheat, and of course, where do we get our bread from? Definitely from wheat. So others have even said also we are likely to see the increase in the price of bread. Already we are suffering, the brunt of increase. A loaf of bread now. It's going for about 600, 700 naira. So you can imagine when we see further increase in the price of bread. Now let's take a look at This Day newspaper. And on This Day newspaper, the stories are pretty much the same. You have the lead story talking about the APC moves to retain Buni as interim chairman. You see also Bello as acting chair. You would see John Akpanu-Dodehe's fate uncertain, and that's the secretary of the caretaker committee. And then the other writers there says, group alleges fresh plot to sack Yobe governor through court injunction. You see party moves to have court injunction stopping convention vacated. Other stories there, Osinbajo, Buhari and I have not had any religious dispute in 7 years. And then other stories there, APC crisis stalls defection suit against Tambua, Otom, and Obaseki. Other stories, Janko's Nation in Darkness because we owe 1.6 trillion naira since 2013, and that's NBED disputes power Janko's debt claim. You'll see that at the very top of This Day newspaper. I think these are the major stories on This Day newspaper. Politics. It's all about 2023, really. If you just have a look at, all the front pages of our newspapers, that's one thing that you are likely to see. And the conclusion you are likely to make is that all the stories seem to be geared towards, the 2023 general elections. I think that for virtually all the papers that we've seen this morning, with the exception of Daily Independent that, touches on the issues of the economy, basically talking about Nigeria losing 91.6 billion naira yearly to foreign airlines, multiple points. Aside from that, all the other papers are about the APC and its own national convention coming. Litigations are everywhere, and that's the major threat. In fact, it's not even about the Bello versus Buni, rivalry here now. It's about, the court cases that are in court, against, or for the National Convention of the APC. And we're all looking to see how the courts will determine these matters and maybe rescue the APC from collapse. Because, yes, this is huge. And especially if you look at, other grievances, in some quarters of the APC, the factions that we have across all the almost a number of states, in the country. One is left to wonder what is going to happen on the day of the convention, especially since the APC is the party that adopts this concept of, consensus in determining the leaders of the party, and by extension, of course, the candidates that will be holding a ticket of the party in the 2023 general election. So quite a number of issues really that we hope to see how it's going to play out. Another issue is about the defections, and the court cases as well, following defections. We are seeing something that looks more like a new trend in Nigeria's politics. You have governors defecting and, the party is going after them to say, well, this is our mandate. Give it back to us. Since you are defected from our party, then you should find your way. You shouldn't be occupying our seats, because you are no longer with us in our party. We've seen that played out with the governor of Ebonyi State, Dave Umahi, and then we are seeing that there is likelihood of that happening too with the governor of Zamfara State, Matawale, and of course we are also likely to see that happens. Some are also raising issues about Ben Ayade, as also one of those who have defected and is likely to have, the same kind of ruling on his matter. So we are following up with all of that, really. But let's take a short breather now, and then when we come back, we'll take a look at, other stories of interest on our papers. Please stay with us.
Coronavirus disease, COVID-19, is an infectious disease caused by SARS-CoV-2 virus. Most people who fall sick with COVID-19 will experience mild to moderate symptoms and recover without special treatment. However, some will become seriously ill and require medical attention. The virus can spread from an infected person's mouth or nose in small liquid particles when they cough, sneeze, speak, sing, or breathe. These particles range from larger respiratory droplets to smaller aerosols. You can be infected by breathing in the virus if you're near someone who has COVID-19, or by touching a contaminated surface and then touching your eyes, nose, or mouth. The virus spreads more easily indoors and in crowded settings. Maintain a safe distance from others at least 2 meters even if they don't appear to be sick. Wear a mask in public, especially indoors or when physical distancing is not possible. Clean your hands often. Use soap and water or an alcohol-based hand sanitizer. Cover your nose and mouth with your bent elbow or a tissue when you cough or sneeze. Stay home if you feel unwell. Get vaccinated. Properly fitted masks can help prevent the spread of the virus from the person wearing the mask to others. Masks alone do not protect against COVID-19 and should be combined with physical distancing and hand hygiene. Protect yourself and others around you by knowing the facts and taking appropriate precautions. Follow advice provided by your local health authority. This message is brought to you by Trust TV.
The idea was to give the interim government confidence that there is somebody, a military man, who is well known, who can be accepted.
You alluded to the case of your son, Umar Farouk. Are you in touch with him?
Yes, he phones us 2 times, sometimes 3 times in a month.
As always, when I'm talking about late Abiola, I still thank my God for directing me on things to do when he gave me that leadership of this country.
Many of you honest Fulanis, you allow this man to cast aspersion on you.
You know, Zamfara is the mother of all bandits.
The biggest problem, if you permit me, is the fact that we have not been able to get the totality of our citizenry.
It's very, very difficult to have a fixed mind like that this one you will hand over to this person because you think you will do better.
I don't see myself under no circumstance ever leaving APC for another political party.
Now, here on the Mambila Plateau, and this is where the hydroelectric power dam is supposed to be constructed.
Most people in Nigeria are ignorant of the fact that employing a child as a maid is in fact against the law.
Access to the textile mill has been very difficult.
I believe, or I think that if you want to make money, it should be in a place where there are not plenty of people that can do what you do.
From the way things are happening now, I don't think the two parties will make any impact.
I've been talking about the updates concerning the campaign of Nigerian Super Eagles in Abuja.
Bola Tinubu has informed President Muhammadu Buhari of his ambition to contest for the position of president.
To be self-reliant, a blind man defies all odds to become a carpenter in Gombe State.
The country is now experiencing a 4th wave of the COVID-19 pandemic with the emergence of the Omicron variant.
Talks are ongoing between NRC management and the union.
All right, thank you for staying with us. You're watching Daybreak, reaching you live from the nation's capital in Abuja. Now we're taking a look at some of the stories on our front pages this morning. And obviously, like we said, some of the major issues are political issues that we are looking at. Now, another one at hand that, has been generating a lot of conversations, like we said, is about the defection of Dave Umahi and the implication, of it. That is the court order that followed that matter. Now, a lot of people are saying that could this be, something that is ushering something new to our, our democracy in Nigeria, because in the past we've not had, we've had defections, yes, we've had court cases, yes, but not as it, affects, governors and all of that. So there's this conversation about whether or not this is for good or this is not for good, because yes, we've seen, this trend among politicians, defecting indiscriminately, if you may, from their political parties for minor reasons and all of that. And then there's also the issue about who has the mandate. Is it the individual? Is it a candidate? Or is it the party? So if someone is elected on a particular platform, the votes that comes to that person through that platform, does it belong to the party or does it belong to the person? That's a major conversation here, in the sense that if it belongs to the person, then of course the person can, defect and leave with the votes, that brought him into office. But if it belongs to the party, then the votes belongs to the party. And so if the person leaves the party, he ceases to have, the right to hold that office. And then, of course, others have raised question about, the jurisdiction, of the high courts in deciding such matters. Some are saying that this is not an election matter, that should be heard by, and that if it should be heard, it should be heard by, the tribunal, but not, high court. And if it's heard by high court, then what grounds is it using to really determine, some of these election issues? And of course, others have raised a question about, the fundamental rights of the governors, to belong to whatever association. Others have also raised the issue of the immunity enjoyed by governors, and that as a governor, there should be no case, against the governor in court, except and until when he leaves office. And so a lot of people are raising, that conversation. We also have the issue about, previous judgments that have been made, similar judgments, whether or not they can apply in these instances. We've had this kind of judgments apply when it comes to, lawmakers, National Assembly members and State Assembly members. But as to whether this applies to the executive again is also another debate that is ongoing right now. And then, of course, the implication of this on our politics. Will this bring us to an end, to this trend by politicians, ending, the
defections.
Yes, these defections that we see, every now and then.
One other issue, overall, that a lot of stakeholders have talked about is the inconsistency, in Nigeria's judiciary. I really don't know, how this pans out, but a lot of these court judgments, there's been quite inconsistencies in some of these judgments, and it's really
conflicts
damning.
Here and there. We wait to see what is going to happen to the governor of Zamfara State, who is himself, is having a similar issue, and then the Ebonyi State Governor, Ben Ayade, would also, be following up with that. For now, we'll take a short breather, and then when we come back, we'll be connecting virtually with our guests to talk about some of the economic stories that we see on our papers today, specifically as it regards the efforts to, preserve the foreign reserve, of Nigeria. Please stay with us. This is Trust TV, documenting the Nigerian story.
All right, welcome back. If you are just joining us, this is Daybreak on Trust TV. Now, about 10 months after the Central Bank of Nigeria hinted that it will stop foreign exchange sales to deposit money banks amid steeping dwindling forex inflow, the banks have stepped up measures to ration foreign currency sales to its customers using their Naira debit cards for overseas withdrawals. This reflects prevailing economic realities that border on Nigeria's revenue crisis as oil proceeds dwindle, putting pressure on the nation's external reserves. The reserves fell further by $175 million in February to $39.9 billion, despite the upturn in the price of crude oil, the country's aim source of foreign exchange. Now we're being joined by financial analyst Mukhtar Mohammed via Skype from Lagos. Good morning, Mukhtar.
Good morning. Good morning.
To have you join us on Daybreak this morning.
Thank you.
All right. Well, quite a number of issues that we are seeing, this morning, and there are concerns about, the falling foreign reserves, of the country at the moment. What would you say about these measures that we are seeing, by the Central Bank of Nigeria, first of all?
Well, very unfortunately, these measures are not coming from the Central Bank of Nigeria, but they are coming because of the policy of the Central Bank of Nigeria. Like you already did during your introduction, banks are beginning to be proactive before the December date that the CBN said they will no more be giving them FX for them to give to their customers. So banks are beginning to get themselves ready for that. And coupled with the fact, like you said, our dwindling foreign reserve also is not helping matters, because at this point in time, over the years, when oil price goes up, we see our reserve comes up. But this time it's a different story entirely, and this has to do because the type of subsidy we are paying now is higher than what we used to pay before, and other in terms of reservicing of our debt also are part of those challenges that are bringing the reserve down. And we like I said, we've not seen transparency in the FX processes. In those days, we used to know how much is given every weekly to the Bureau de Change. But these days, we don't know how much is being given out every weekly by the central bank, especially to those that are going for medicals, for those that are paying school fees, and also PTE. So all these are what could attribute to the dwindling form of the reserve. And then you remember that we are not able to meet our oil output also. So those are the challenges that we are seeing now.
All right. Now, how will this, have an implication on, the country's manufacturing sector, for instance? Generally, how would they survive this, and how would they cope with this?
Well, they've been coping. They've been coping even in relatively difficult times, as we are. They've coped during the COVID pandemic, and they are still coping. But then, when it comes to things like this, the bulk of the challenges are thrown back to the consumers. So what we are going to see is rising costs in terms of price of goods and services, because they will in turn turn those extra costs back to the consumers. So definitely the manufacturing sector will suffer that, because the earning power of most Nigerians are still where they are. So we could see most Nigerians not buying some of their products, but them in turn will also put the cost of some of these goods a little bit higher than what it is now. So it's going to also cost inflation also to rise up again. So it's an issue that the CBN have tried to deal with administratively. They've tried to deal with it terminal with policy. They've tried to deal with it from punishing infringers in the foreign FX market. But all these have not worked, because they've not been able to produce a particular what I call a product that will stay the test of time to be able to stabilize the reserve. Because now what the reserve needs and what we need as a country is to be able to earn more FX into the country in the area of supply, especially because demand is high but supply is very low. So definitely that will have effect in the manufacturing sector because they will not be able to access FX, and so they might have to go to access it through the secondary market, which in turn is selling for as high as 581. So at that, when you get it at that price, then I mean the cost of the production has gone up, and so what will happen? Those productions will come back to the consumer, and you know there are different type of inflation. This type of inflation that we are seeing now, it's market-induced inflation. That is what we call cost-induced inflation. There's a cost-induced inflation, there's a government-induced inflation, and there's also a market-induced inflation. But what we see play out in terms when the inflationary figures comes back to us, it will be cost-induced inflation. We shouldn't forget that they are battling with this, and also the price of diesel also have gone up to the all-time high. So all this will come into us seeing a very high inflationary figure. In turn, then you see the cost of goods will go up. And so it's definitely at the end of the day, is the ordinary Nigerians that suffer more.
All right, now with the ongoing crisis between Russia and Ukraine, we've seen that there's a spike in the global price of crude oil, and that Nigeria is supposed to be shoring up its foreign reserve as a result of this. So are we making the most of this opportunity?
No, two factors are responsible for us not making the most of this opportunity. One, our the area of payment of subsidy is affecting us seriously, because what we gain in terms of oil price, we lose it in terms of refined petroleum product. So that's one. Then secondly, also the insecurity in Nigeria, especially the oil theft that's ongoing there, is making us not to be able to meet our production target, which is supposed to be 1.8 million barrels per day. Well, until this weekend, we're still doing 1.3. Until this weekend, I would say we've hyped it to about 1.5. So definitely those are the two major factors that are making us not to enjoy the benefit in terms of high rising crude price that would have in turn paid the bottom line of our reserves.
All right, now on our papers this morning, we saw something about, reactions trailing central bank's decision, to go back to implement this price verification system. And the argument that the CBN is making is that it will help the Nigerian Customs Service, for instance, to, show up, our foreign exchange and all of that. To what extent do you see this, having a positive impact on these drives?
Well, you see, what we keep saying is that the policy that the CBN is coming with are not entirely bad policy. But then such policies work when you have stability, not when you are going through a crisis. You need to bring up policy that when you are stable, then you begin to do policy. Because until recently, CBN remained the sole receiver of FX from sale of crude oil from Nigeria. So definitely it still go to the CBN account. And then when you look at other sectors of the economy that would drive FX into the market, they also not that much, because 90% of FX are done through crude production, and now this 90% of the income goes directly to the CBN. So we are looking at the manufacturing sector begin to attract FX, and this has to do with a lot of things, a lot of infrastructural challenges they are going through. So what we are seeing now, we are seeing that continuously we see that CBN is still the largest receiver of FX in Nigeria. The banks will need to come up with product, and then when they come up with product, then there's a price to pay, and that's the price that the consumers are beginning to pay earlier than what the expected dates or the expected time of December. So it is a good policy in the long run, but in the short term, it's better it brings stability to the system, because the challenge with Nigeria is not about maintaining a fixed rate. It's stabilizing that fixed rate for a long time. If you look at the history of our country, you realize that we maintain this fixed rate for some time, but once they come an external shock, which may have to do like what we are seeing the Russia and Ukraine crisis now, then you see that there's panic in the system. Then we see the price of goods and services, then we see the exchange rate go very, very high. And you saw that also play during the time of the pandemic. But if we have put structures on ground that will meditate against this in terms of making sure that more of our products, especially the manufacturing sector, are able to attract FX into the economy, that although the CBN will tell you that they are trying to work on that with the RX200 system, but that is just a platform and a system that has just come in, so it will take time before we begin to see that result. So what I would advise the CBN to do is bring stability into the market first and foremost, then before you begin to tell bank that we will no more be able to guarantee effects for your customer. That means those effects from your customer will have to come from you. So, but then if you do it the way it is now, you see a spike in the exchange rate, and we are seeing that in the secondary market now, because the exchange rate between the naira and the dollar has gone up within a week from a low of 570 to a low of 581 naira.
All right, now for our manufacturing sector to be able to drive that, foreign exchange or attract that foreign exchange, of course, they must be able to produce and export, isn't it? So how can, we have some kind of incentives that will enable them, produce such that, they can be able to export? Because at the end of the day, if they are not able to produce, we cannot be talking about them attracting effects. So in terms of sourcing, raw materials, in terms of, sourcing some of the things that they will have to get, import them into the country, how do we balance that, and making provision for them? I
think the CBN is already doing that by direct interventions. Most of all this, in terms of details, in terms of effects, in terms of infrastructural challenges, the CBN is trying to handle that. So that's why we complain that should be a commercial bank process, but the CBN is handling it. They are doing direct intervention. They are taking care of most of the reserve. Most of these SMEs and most of these companies, and they are directly taking care of it. So I think the CBN is trying to do that to encourage them to be able to attract more effects into the country. Like I said, that's the whole reason behind the RX200, trying to see 200 firms that they can collaborate with that will attract about 200 billion in terms of foreign effects, foreign currency, especially the dollar, into the Nigerian economy. And so what the CBN is doing is picking this company and giving them all the assistance they need, especially in the area of foreign exchange, so that they will be able to meet up with the demand globally. I think, like I said, that is a right decision. That's a good decision to take. But in the time that we are, you need to stabilize the crisis, then before you begin to come up with decisions that will help to keep that stability at a very low level. For now, we may not be able to see that in the short term, but in the long run, if the RX200 works out fine, then we'll see that happen.
All right, now this may look like a bit divergent, from the whole discussion, but this is 2022, and it's the eve of election and all of that. Do you see that there's maybe some kind of correlation, yes, between this foreign exchange and the politicking that will happen in this season?
Definitely, you will see that play out in the secondary market very soon, especially when we start having those primaries. We'll begin to see a lot of foreign exchange in the market space, especially these politicians. They will begin to throw it there, and we could see the naira gain over the dollar for some short time. That's what I always say happened during the election years, because sometimes some of these politicians have a lot of this of this dollar in their hold, but they won't want to spend it during the electoral year. So we'll see that, but we mustn't forget that if we see that, then, but we should also not forget that governance will take a backseat. So it's all about politicking. So what we cannot determine to do now will be difficult for us to do until next year, whereby we know that this is the person that's going to be the president, especially when you are not looking for a second term for a president. Rather, you will see a new president take the position. And what will be that president direction in terms of economic? Those are part of the things that will be a very huge challenge.
All right, well, thank you so much for joining us on Daybreak this morning and sharing your thoughts with us. We look forward to having you join us on the show again another time.
Thank you so much. Good morning, Abuja.
All right. Well, we've been speaking with Mukhtar Muhammad, and he is joining us via Skype from Lagos. He's a financial analyst, giving us his thoughts about the recent policies. Now, we'll be taking a short breather, and then when we come back, the show will continue. Please stay with us.
Coronavirus disease, COVID-19, is an infectious disease caused by SARS-CoV-2 virus. Most people who fall sick with COVID-19 will experience mild to moderate symptoms and recover without special treatment. However, some will become seriously ill and require medical attention. The virus can spread from an infected person's mouth or nose in small liquid particles when they cough, sneeze, speak, sing, or breathe. These particles range from larger respiratory droplets to smaller aerosols. You can be infected by breathing in the virus if you're near someone who has COVID-19 or by touching a contaminated surface and then touching your eyes, nose, or mouth. The virus spreads more easily indoors and in crowded settings. Maintain a safe distance from others at least 2 meters even if they don't appear to be sick. Wear a mask in public, especially indoors or when physical distancing is not possible. Clean your hands often. Use soap and water or an alcohol-based hand sanitizer. Cover your nose and mouth with your bent elbow or a tissue when you cough or sneeze. Stay home if you feel unwell. Get vaccinated. Properly fitted masks can help prevent the spread of the virus from the person wearing the mask to others. Masks alone do not protect against COVID-19 and should be combined with physical distancing and hand hygiene. Protect yourself and others around you by knowing the facts and taking appropriate precautions. Follow advice provided by your local health authority. This message is brought to you by Trust TV.
Construction of road is being carried out in all the 3 senatorial districts of Kwara State in Ilorin, the state capital. Work is ongoing on the Tanke flyover bridge. For now, traffic to and from the University of Ilorin Road has been diverted to allow for concentration on the bridge.
We do challenge contractors on quality of work that are being done. Like today I was here and I saw a portion that I saw soaked and I'm like, no, you cannot, grade here. You have to allow the water out first, then also the quality of material, because we want to make sure whatever we do, people in the next 10-20 years, they are still proud that yes, we have this government and they've done well. That is where they will also pick up from. So if our contractors are not doing well, we challenge them. There is no way for them to hide. We will always challenge.
Also in Tanke, the government has commenced the construction of 1.85-kilometer Tanke-Okeodu Ring Road, which is expected to ease the transportation problem of the residents, the adjoining villages, who are mostly students.
The road is very bad, dusty. It affects our goods in the shop. That most time we have to come, we have to clean the shop over and over again. And again, due to, and also my health, because I wasn't planning to live here. But my auntie was like, I should just have faith that they will repair the road. We are grateful. The dust has reduced. We're also grateful that everything is moving fine now. And to also develop this area, because most of my friends staying in this area and the hostel, they have to move down to another place. So I think this road, them repairing this road, will bring more development to this area. So we are grateful and God bless our able governor.
So we are very appreciate our Kwara State government, particularly our humble governor, Abdurrahman Abdurrazak, for this development. We are very, very happy, and we pray for him that God will help him to do many more. This road, we have been crying for this road for many years. But now that Abdurrahman Abdurrazak entered the government, so he listened to us. So that's why we are appreciating him.
Work is equally ongoing on the 4.8-kilometer Yebumut-Adeta Oloje Road, which is a single line, but government is upgrading it to a dual carriageway.
Yes, so this project was awarded by the Kwara State government. The project begins at Yebumut, comes to Alikma University, comes to Adeta roundabout, and finishes up at Oloje. The distance is about 4.8 kilometers, approximately 5 kilometers. We've been contracted to dualize the road and to put in a well-functioning drainage system on the road as well. Well, the project, the contract is approximately 1.6 billion naira. The duration of the project is 10 months, and as of now, everything is going to plan, and we're sure to finish at that particular time. So far, the community has been very welcoming. They've been understanding. We've had no problems at all. No challenge. The quality of the project is going to be well done. It's going to stand the test of time. And you come back here 10 years, 20 years from now, you see this project.
The government assures that it will not allow substandard work by any contractors across the state.
All right. Well, thank you for staying. That's a report from Kwara State talking about the construction of road project that is ongoing. Quite commendable. We hope to see more of this, across the length and breadth of the country. After all, what we require is infrastructural development, isn't it?
Development, that's what we are hoping to see.
All right, now we will be taking a look at an exclusive interview that we had earlier, talking about health, and of course we believe is something that will benefit our viewers, and so we'll bring that to you right after this breather. This is Trust TV, documenting the Nigerian story.
Cancer refers to a very life-threatening, debilitating condition where cells in the body, which are not supposed to multiply unmitigatedly, start multiplying, and they multiply in an unregulated manner. And after some time, they start spreading through different routes to other parts of the body, causing significant dysfunction and harm to the host. The problem with cancer is that it can affect any cell in the body. Deriving from that, cancer may affect the eyes, the brain, the chest, the lungs, the liver, the kidneys, any part of the body. No part of the body, as far as it has living cells, is spared. It is very common and is a significant cause of morbidity and mortality. In the African population, with Nigeria contributing the most, 1 in every 5 Africans are Nigerian, it's important to know that Nigeria also contributes a significant burden to the cancer prevalence. Cancer prevalence significant burden to cancer prevalence. It is also important to remember that the facilities and the cost implication for managing patients who have cancer is also a significant burden to either the families or the healthcare sector at any point in time. But before all of that, the question is, how common is cancer? Cancer There are difficulties with assessing different epidemiological values and the rest, but it's important to remember that there are certain claims that as much as 10 to 30,000 Nigerians are diagnosed with cancer every day. Now, this number in 200 million is a significant percentage. Some of these people may not have access to healthcare intervention, and when they do, they are unable to afford these interventions. So cancer risk factors would include things that you can do something about and things you cannot do anything about. So modifiable risk factors are things like exposure to cigarette, large quantities of alcohol consumptions, exposure, sedentary lifestyle, where patients are inactive. People who are obese have a higher risk factor of developing cancer, exposure to radiations, exposure to UV radiations, exposure to nuclear radiations. Even patients who work, people who work in the radiology department in different sectors of the economy, the health sectors and the mining sectors and other sectors. People who are also exposed to certain infections. It's been known that liver cancer, for example, is typically mostly caused by hepatitis B and hepatitis C. Other forms of cancers like cancer of the bile duct have also been related to certain types of biliary worm infestations. Cancer of the skin has been seen to be higher in people who have low pigmentation, things like people who may have one or two forms of albinism, and people who work in the open under the sun and are exposed to UV radiations are more also at risk of developing cancers. People who work in certain industries like the dye industry are also at risk of, because of exposure to carcinogenic materials, are also at risk. People who are in certain businesses like the entertainment businesses where they are exposed to steady amounts of cigarette smoking, whether directly or indirectly, and people who smoke generally, because cigarette, for example, has been shown to have as much as 5,000 cancer-causing materials, which we call carcinogens. So this, to a large extent, can also increase the risk of patients developing cancer. Some people may have an inherited risk factor to develop cancer. So patients who have a family history of colon cancer may also have their relatives being at risk. Patients who have breast cancer may also have their relatives also being at risk. Patients who have ovarian cancer may also have their relatives being at risk. It's also important to also not forget that patients who are engaged, who in the course of maybe other forms of treatment need transplant surgery. So for example, patients who have been exposed to transplant surgeries will require medications that reduce their immunity, and therefore these patients are also at risk of cancer. Patients who have low immunity, like patients who have HIV and are not taking medications, and because of that low immunity, their body, in the body, they are also at risk of developing certain forms of cancers. The key thing is that whatever form of cancer a person develops, there are presentations. Some of the presentations and clinical presentations are usually as a result of the local effect of the cancer, the distant effect of the cancer within the body, and then whether the cancer is involved in producing one or two active chemicals, which may be hormones or otherwise. So sometimes patients who have cancer in certain parts of the body would have symptoms that are related to pressure from the mass effect. So patients who have cancers of the throat will have difficulty swallowing because it will be obstructing the free flow of fluid or water. Patients who have cancer of the intestine may have some form of constipation. Patients who have cancers of the urinary tract, like prostate cancer, they may have problems with urinating. Whatever it is, the symptoms will be significantly related to the part of the body that is affected. Now, other symptoms may be as a result of a spread from one part of the body to another. So a patient may have a colon cancer in one part of the body, but because it has spread to the lungs, patients may have problems with breathing and all of that. Now, cancers even when they present, commonly some cancers will present without any symptom, totally without any symptoms. At this stage, the only way some patients may find it is if on presenting to the hospital for other health complaints, these cancers are incidentally discovered. In other situations, if, for example, a patient decides to do a general checkup, the patient may again discover some cancers. And then there are some situations where, due to age and gender, there are certain routine screenings for cancers that are very common. So cancers of the prostate, for example, they are advocates that a regular screening, because in men, this risk of this cancer increases with age and may be tied to higher levels of a blood-detected chemical called the prostate-specific antigen. In the case of women, cancer of the cervix is one preventable cancer that can be picked up early. And to do that, patients typically would require regular pap smear to a large extent. So then patients who may have hepatitis B or C, because of the risk of liver cancer, will require regular screening to a large extent. So it's important to understand that there are certain cancers that are found in certain parts of the body, but screening is critical and important in detecting them. And then not to forget colon cancer. In fact, it's statutory required that people engage in a screening for colon cancer in a timely manner. So some patients, it's recommended that they get screening every 10 years if they are doing a colonoscopy, where a pipe is passed through the backside to visualize all part of the large intestine in search of cancer. Now, irrespective of whatever cancer a patient may have, it's important to understand that the time of presentation is critical. So a cancer may present either in the early stage or in the late stage. Now, at the early stage, there's a small chance that there's some chance that permanent cure and remission of the cancer can be achieved with radical treatment. But in the late stage, when it has spread to different parts of the body, it's typically difficult to achieve cure. Most times, what the patient will be offered is palliative intervention, where the patient will get some chemical treatment in the form of chemotherapy, some radiation treatment in the form of radiotherapy, and other interventions that may help reduce the chance or the speed with which the patient loses vitality and dies off. So, to a large extent, because of the variety of cancers that may be present, interventions will depend on what type of cancer it is and the understanding of the cancer. In a nutshell, it's important to remember that early identification of and diagnosis of cancer is critical in achieving cure. But be that as it may, it is important to also put to note that there are preventive measures that reduce the risk of cancer. Some of these preventive measures may be generalized and some may be specific to certain cancers. For example, example of generalized preventive measures means just healthy living. Some of those healthy livings we all know about, things like exercising regularly reduces the risk of cancer. Maintaining a healthy body weight using the body mass index calculation, which your doctor can do for you, is also critical in ensuring that patients reduce their risk of cancer. Then avoiding those agents that cause cancer, things like cigarette smoking, is also critical. At this point, it's important that I clearly spell out that there are two kinds of cigarette smoking, two general groups. You have primary smoking and secondary smoking. So primary smoking means that the patient involved is actually or was actually a smoker. But secondary smoking is also a very passive form of smoking, where the person involved is sometimes aloof and does not understand the risk he or her is being exposed to. But to contextualize it, allow me to say that if you are in a room where you have people smoking and you sit there and quite a number of people are smoking and you sit there for 1 hour, you would have consumed between 10 to 20 sticks of cigarette. You have not taken a cigarette, you have not held a cigarette, you have not dragged and inhaled it, but by the mere fact of sitting there, you are passively inhaling smoke. And that in itself is passive smoking. And the risk for cancer for patients who are passively smoking is no different from those people who are also smoking directly. So it's important to remember that fact. The high intake of alcohol, is also very, very, very important and very common, and a risk factor, especially for liver cancer in patients with other forms of infection. Early exposure to hepatitis viral infection, hepatitis B and hepatitis C infections are also very critical to developing liver cancer. So it means that preventive measures will involve things like the use of vaccination, hepatitis B vaccination, and early treatment of hepatitis B and hepatitis C, and the avoidance of alcohol. These three things to a large extent reduce. And then a fourth factor, the exposure to aflatoxin. In fact, it has been recently reported that some granules in the sub-Saharan Africa were found to have high levels of mycotoxin. Mycotoxin is a product of the mycotoxin, or aflatoxin specifically, is a product of a fungus called Aspergillus fumigatus. Now, this produces fungal spores which contaminate granite and are found in significant levels, and they have been shown to contribute significantly to liver cancer in the African population. And in fact, recently we were told that some of our exported granules were reversed, were denied access in certain parts of the world, in other parts of the world, because of high levels of mycotoxin. So it's important that we put this in perspective. Other preventive measures like reduction of radiation. So for people who are working in radiological departments, it's important that they regulate their exposure, they take the necessary measures and exposure. For patients who have albino, for albino patients who have albinism, it's important that when they go out in the sun, they are well protected, they are well covered up, they will use their sunshades, and they use their proper clothing to avoid unnecessary exposure. If all these measures are taken, including others that I may not have mentioned, and a patient still develops cancer, it's important that because we are a highly religious society, and because we do not have a very, very organized health system, patients take a long time before they present in facilities where they can get proper care. It is important that in as much as you go to the church to pray and you go to the mosque to pray for your miracle, you should also do the right thing and get proper health advice from a doctor in a proper health facility, so that you can be referred appropriately. Most health facilities do not have what it takes to treat cancer or even to make a diagnosis of cancer, so you would require a referral. So presenting in any health facility with proper referral can reduce the delay before the marked spread of the cancer, which makes it more difficult and more expensive to treat.
The idea was to give the interim government confidence that there is somebody, a military man, who is well known, who can be accepted.
You alluded to the case of your son, Umar Farouk. Are you in touch with him?
Yes, he phones us 2 times, sometimes 3 times in a month.
As always, when I'm talking about late Abiola, I still thank my God for directing me on things to do when he gave me that leadership of this country.
Many of you honest Fulanis, you allow this man to cast aspersion on you.
You know, Zamfara is the mother of all bandits.
The biggest problem, if you permit me, is the fact that we have not been able to get the totality of our citizenry.
It's very, very difficult to have a fixed mind like that this one you will hand over to this person because you think you will do better.
I don't see myself under no circumstance ever leaving APC for another political party?
Now, here on the Mambila Plateau. And this is where the hydroelectric power dam is supposed to be constructed.
Most people in Nigeria are ignorant of the fact that employing a child as a maid is in fact against the law.
Access to the textile mill has been very difficult.
I believe, or I think that if you want to make money, it should be in a place where there are not plenty of people that can do what you do.
From the way things are happening now, I don't think the two parties will make an impact.
I've been talking about the updates concerning the campaign of Nigerian Super Eagles in Abuja.
Bola Tinubu has informed President Muhammadu Buhari of his ambition to contest for the position of president.
To be self-reliant, a blind man defies all odds to become a carpenter in Gombe State.
The country is now experiencing a fourth wave of the COVID-19 pandemic with the emergence of the Omicron variant.
Talks are ongoing between NRC management and the union.
The cost of A1 jet fuel has continued to soar exponentially. The recent price of 430 naira per litre as of Thursday skyrocketed to 580 naira per litre, with states like Kano buying for as much as 607 naira per litre. Oil marketers have also predicted that the cost, if left unchecked, may shift to 700 naira per litre.
From 190 gets to 360, 360 to 400, 415, and just a week ago, the price jumped to over 500. And currently, yesterday, some of our colleagues in the industry were saying that they bought fuel at 670 per litre. And if you now equate that with your cost of operation, it makes no airline will be making profit right now. If it takes 40% before and you were charging 190 and now you are now paying 650, it's like 300% increase. So that will have a tremendous impact.
The hike in the price of aviation fuel triggered airlines to increase airfares by almost 100%. The recent development is stoking fears that prices will once again soar. How will this affect an industry that is struggling to recover from the effects of COVID-19?
It will slow down the growth of the industry. And except government intervene, there's little or nothing that the airline can do. Even at this price we are talking, I'm not too sure that the price have gone up to 100,000. I know that the price is 50. The lowest fare is 50, and I'm not too sure it has gone up to 100,000. And with that, whatever gain the airline might have made over the years, within a short time, the industry is a very volatile industry, because the profit margin itself is very small and the cost of operation is increasing by the day. The exchange rate is not also helping matter. Buying dollar, very expensive amount of money, and we charge customers in naira, and the spare parts are not bought in naira, bought in dollars. So it's going to have serious adverse effect, except something is done quickly. If it is not done, within the next few weeks, most airlines will not be able to fly.
Amidst plans to launch the national carrier Air Nigeria, the current challenges and realities may hamper its successful takeoff.
People kept talking about removing the subsidy. The subsidy is to help the local, airline to grow. If you look at the industry, basically, Nigerian airline can't compete favorably with the other carriers. The international carrier, and we are at loss because it's capital flights to us. We don't take anything from them. And even the local carrier, if he's operating outside Nigeria, what will happen to him is that he have one short stop, just one stop. It's the same, it doesn't have what we call points beyond. It doesn't go point beyond. It takes a passenger from here, for instance, to London, and that same passenger is going to bring back. And that passenger is paying in Naira. It's not having any corresponding income. That's why you're finding that most local carriers are struggling, in operating international flights. If you can remember, most local carriers that have ventured into international flights collapsed. That was because they were not able to fund the cost of operation. So the only thing that can be done is government to look at area, like in my personal opinion, this is my personal opinion, that the government, instead of venturing into airline business, government should look at a way of creating a neighboring environment for this local airline to grow.
Air Peace, Azman Air, United Nigeria Airline, Arik Air, Aero Contractors, and Max Air have announced an alliance called the Spring Alliance for mutual support and better services and navigate the challenges the industry is facing. Chamun Dabeng, Trust TV News, Abuja.
Well, there you have it, the conversation about aviation fuel. It's something that I'm not sure how, it's going to impact on the aviation sector in the country, but definitely is not a good one, especially if you look at what the aviation industry in Nigeria and all over the world indeed have had to grapple with all through the period of the COVID-19, the travel restrictions, across different countries. So it's a major issue that I hope to see that we are able to come off this. But again, when you think about, some of the recent happenings, the Russia-Ukraine crisis, and, the soaring prices of the crude oil and, the price of aviation fuel itself, the future looks very bleak, for a lot of Nigerians, especially when it has to do with air travels. Just when Nigerians are beginning to think that, well, we have an option, with the air travels, especially if you look at the situation of the roads and the issues of insecurity in the country, and then we are seeing this, and this is, of course, pushing, the price of air tickets to more than 100% now, as we know.
It's tragic, really.
All right, we have also other stories that we are, yet to verify, but what we know is about ASU, that it is extending its strike by 8 weeks. We are going to confirm that and bring that details later in our news bulletins as well. But for now, this is what we have, and it's quite sad. Just when we thought, okay, maybe it's just a 1-month warning strike. After that, we'll be going back to the classrooms, but perhaps that may not happen. So for our students back at home, well, brace up, because it looks like we're just getting started, unfortunately. It's not funny though, but this is our reality right now. Well, now we'll take a short breather, and then when we come back, we would look at, some stories, or I would say some remarks by lawmakers regarding the issues of COVID-19. Please take a look.
Coronavirus disease, COVID-19, is an infectious disease caused by SARS-CoV-2 virus. Most people who fall sick with COVID-19 will experience mild to moderate symptoms and recover without special treatment. However, some will become seriously ill and require medical attention. The virus can spread from an infected person's mouth or nose in small liquid particles when they cough, sneeze, speak, sing, or breathe. These particles range from larger respiratory droplets to smaller aerosols. You can be infected by breathing in the virus if you're near someone who has COVID-19 or by touching a contaminated surface and then touching your eyes, nose, or mouth. The virus spreads more easily indoors and in crowded settings. Maintain a safe distance from others at least 2 meters even if they don't appear to be sick. Wear a mask in public, especially indoors or when physical distancing is not possible. Clean your hands often. Use soap and water or an alcohol-based hand sanitizer. Cover your nose and mouth with your bent elbow or a tissue when you cough or sneeze. Stay home if you feel unwell. Get vaccinated. Properly fitted masks can help prevent the spread of the virus from the person wearing the mask to others. Masks alone do not protect against COVID-19 and should be combined with physical distancing and hand hygiene. Protect yourself and others around you by knowing the facts and taking appropriate precautions. Follow advice provided by your local health authority. This message is brought to you by Trust TV.
The training is to enlighten health workers to help address the gap in COVID-19 vaccination. Nafisa Adamu from the Planned Parenthood Federation believes health workers could serve as links between communities and the government. She said the training will equip them to address COVID-19 hesitancy.
The number of people taking up the vaccines and then there was an assessment that was carried out, and then the number of people we saw from facilities taking up the vaccine, knowing that people will go to the facilities or will go to the health workers to take these vaccines, and then the hesitancy we noticed from that make us now come up with this training so that we enlighten and then try to close the gap for whichever reason that people are not taking some of these vaccines. For me, I think it's really for the masses, because whatever it is in the health industry, the government normally come through the healthcare workers, and then for me, the community and the health workers, like is the community, the health workers are the link between the community and the government. So if you train the healthcare workers, definitely the community will now benefit from it. So that's one of the reasons, again, why this training is, for us, is very important.
We're training our primary healthcare workers, and we're building their capacity, and we're going to be supporting them with also materials after building their capacity. We're going to be supporting them with job aids, with SOPs, that's standards operating procedures. We're going to be supporting them with IEC materials, to aid the quality of service they give in COVID-19 vaccination. We're also going to be supporting with some other cold chain equipment, like the vaccine carriers, like thermometers, and AD syringe, and several other things that will just aid them in the work they are doing.
Some of the health workers at the training also speak.
The training is very, very interesting. I'm very happy because this training updated me on this issue of this COVID-19. People are saying many things about the COVID-19. When I attend this training, it's updating me on more knowledge about the COVID-19.
So far, so good. In fact, it was very, very interested. In fact, we started it yesterday. It makes me to know more about COVID-19 vaccine, because there were rumors about it and a misconception about the vaccine. But from yesterday up to today, I'm able to know the importance of taking this vaccine.
This training is a training that is right on time, because it's actually going to improve our practices on the COVID-19 vaccinations and what to tell the people about COVID-19 vaccinations.
The training will be replicated in Kano and Kaduna State.
Concerned that the mass transmission scheme failed due to factors such as poor management, lack of strict processes, which weakened its sustainability. Worried that millions of commuters across the country still experience difficulties in commuting due to insufficient mass transit vehicles, thus exposing them to grave dangers such as harassments, kidnapping, and robbery, amongst other things.
Concerned that the local oil marketers are demanding upfront cash payment before fueling aircraft. Observe that if urgent and immediate steps are not taken to ameliorate these challenges mentioned above, airlines and passengers will continue to suffer severe consequential economic and travel crises that might lead to total shutdown of air transport services.
Well, there you have it. Some comments by lawmakers. Well, with that, we've come to the end of Daybreak for today. In case you've missed, you can always catch up on our YouTube and also follow us across all social media platforms. This is being streamed live every day on our YouTube. So subscribe to that and get also other contents on our YouTube. My name is Ayubelia. Thank you for watching the show.
And I'm Zainab Bala. See you tomorrow.